Disney Lorcana is extremely fun, but it can be pretty difficult to get cards because of how expensive both sealed product and singles are right now. I've seen a lot of people express interest in the game, then walk away when they see how expensive it is to build one of the top competitive decks in the format. I hear many people expressing that they think it's impossible to play Disney Lorcana right now because of these issues, and I wanted to see if that were actually true. I challenged myself to build 3 budget decks, one of each starter deck ink pairing, and see if I could beat my good friend Sneaky Buffalo from the Glimmer Gang in a best of 3 using each one, while he could play whatever deck he wanted to with no price limit, similar to what you might find at your local Disney Lorcana League. If you missed the last episode, I built an upgraded version of the Amber Amethyst starter deck and won game 1 with it against Sneaky's Amber Ruby deck. Be sure to go watch that one if you haven't already. The link will be in the description. Now it's time to see if my Sapphire Steel budget deck is on par with Sneaky's Amber Ruby one. Before we get to that, I wanted to let everyone know that this video is sponsored by Alchemist Refuge. They hooked me up with all the cards I needed for these budget deck videos, and I can't recommend them enough. They've got a great website that's updated constantly with Disney Lorcana singles so that you can get what you need to build your decks. These prices are competitive, and I personally like getting most of my cards from one place rather than getting 7 different packages from somewhere like TCG Player. Be sure to use the link in the description or use the code B2 at checkout for 5% off your total order. If you check them out and decide to order some singles, make sure to let them know that B2 sent you. This next budget deck is an upgrade of the Sapphire Steel deck, leaning into the ramp package with an item package to support. We play general good cards like the Mufasa and Maleficent that are threats on board and are great targets to ramp into if you can hit your ramp pieces on curve. There are a couple opening lines to look out for. The first is playing Grimatala on turn 2, then singing
One jump ahead of the breadline.
One jump ahead with her on turn 3. This sets you up nicely so that you can ramp at least 1 ink, if not 2 if your opponent decides to banish your Grimatala. I also want to highlight the 2 early shift options in this deck. You can shift both Aurora or Captain Hook on turn 3, and sing grab your sword or let it go if you need to deal with aggressive decks early. One of the problems the Sapphire Steel starter deck runs into is not having enough draw. For that reason, we play Maurice and a bunch of items. The deck I played in the video didn't run any Beast Smears, but I'd slot out 1 or 2 Magic Golden Flowers and Scepter of Arendelles for Beast Smear as another draw option in case your Maurice doesn't stick or you can't find him. It's synergistic with the deck, and to be honest, I'm not sure why I didn't add them into the deck originally. I'd probably try to find room for 3 of them. Because we're playing a bunch of items, we also want to play Tamatoa since he's a pretty cheap, super rare, and can be a real bomb drop and win you games with all the items we run. Your main goal with this deck is to stall the early and mid game while you ramp into your big stuff so that you can use your big questers like Mufasa and Maleficent to catch up quickly and use your items like Magic Golden Flower and Scepter of Arendelle to help you make favorable trades while setting up for Tamatoa. I know you likely don't have every card needed for this list, which is totally okay. As mentioned in the last video, it's okay to slot different cards in if needed. Just try to make sure they're fulfilling similar or equally important roles in the deck as the card you're replacing. If you have better, more expensive cards like Hades or Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, throw those in too because it'll make the deck even better and more consistent. If you need help regarding deck building and want more in-depth content on how to build decks, I highly suggest checking out this video I've already made on that topic. But with that being said, let's see how it holds up against Sneaky's constructed deck for round 2. For those of you who didn't watch the last episode, Sneaky's running an Amber Ruby deck that leans heavily into the Princess package while also playing cards like Maui, Aladdin Heroic Outlaw, Dragonfire, and Be Prepared to keep control of the board. As mentioned earlier, in my opening hand, the cards that I'm really looking for are things like Grimatala, maybe an Aurora to get that big Aurora out on turn 3. Basically anything early. I think we saw a couple item cards and maybe a Tamatoa in there that I'm mulliganing away. I don't want to keep the Tamatoa because I'm not going to play that anytime soon. And it is a big win condition to the deck, so I don't want to just ink it if I don't have to. Plus, the items aren't very useful right now. I think it was like a Scepter of Arendelle and maybe a Magic Golden Flower. And those just aren't going to help me in the first couple turns of the game. I want to be able to ramp as quickly as possible so that I can get up into my bigger units and start putting real pressure on board before Sneaky can get away from me. One of the things that I know about Sneaky's deck from the last match is that he does run a couple lanterns, which in that case would be a form of ramp for his deck. So I want to try to not necessarily out ramp him, but I don't want him to get too far ahead of me when it comes to that. Mainly I'm looking for like a 1-drop Captain Hook into maybe a big Captain Hook, or again like the Auroras, something like a Grimatala into a 1-jump ahead. Any of those early plays would be really, really good. We see I kept 2 Develop Your Brains. I basically did this because in case I didn't have a 1-drop, I wanted to be able to use Develop Your Brain just to filter some stuff out and get to the stuff that I actually need. We see that I use it right here. We draw a Tamatoa and we draw a Beast. This is kind of a difficult decision because, like I said earlier, I don't want to get rid of these Tamatoas too early. And basically I have to choose to keep this Tamatoa in my hand and it's just kind of dead for a while, or I have to put it at the bottom of my deck, which means I'm probably never going to see it. But depending on what is in my hand, the beast may be a little bit better because it may be something that I can play sooner. So like if I don't have a 5-drop play and I need one, it might be something I'm looking forward to. It looks like I'm putting beast in. Also counters the lanterns a little bit. But we put Tamatoa at the bottom of the deck here. And that's going to be my turn, leading it over to Sneaky. We see a Maurice in hand too. We keep that because that's really the only draw that we have in the deck. So with only 4 of them in the deck, we want to make sure that we have some access to that if possible. I do see a Grammatala in there, which is good. That'll probably come down the next turn. The Sneaky decide to ink an Ariel, and that's all. So pretty slow start. We see a big Ariel. I don't know if we have a little Ariel in there. I don't believe we do, but that would be really nice to play the Ariel and then the Dreaming Guardian Ariel on turn 3, because then that opens us up to a bunch of songs. We end up inking the beast anyway, so whether I took the Tamatoa or the beast, it would have gotten inked. And we just play the Grammatala. Not putting a lot of pressure on board. It maybe can get me an extra lore, or I can swing it into something to ramp myself up a little bit. And then we see Sneaky is going to play a Lantern, so Sneaky's going to do his own form of ramp. This is a little bit scary for me because in Sneaky's Amber Ruby deck, he has a lot of really good mid-range cards. One that I'm thinking of in particular is Rapunzel. So Rapunzel allows you to heal something and then draw the amount that you healed for up to 3. And that can come down on turn 5. And now that he has a Lantern down, that basically puts him close, just a little bit closer to that. Okay, we do see a little Aurora come down. We know we have the big Aurora in hand, so we can play that and then sing something like Let It Go or Grab Your Swords if we want to. We're just going to quest for one with Grammatala because we have an open board, so why not gain a little bit of lore from her. We'll see what Sneaky decides to do. He is ramping faster than I am at this point. He'll be able to drop a 4-cost character, whereas Grammatala is conditional ramp in a sense, where she needs to be banished before she goes to the Inkwell. And if I have no way to banish her, then there's no way for me to ramp with her. So we see Sneaky is going to drop a 4-cost unit, and it's going to be Cinderella, which is kind of a big problem for me, mainly because I don't think there's anything that I can play to take out the Cinderella because of her big willpower. So even if I shift into the Dreaming Guardian, I can't, well, one, I can't challenge Cinderella at all because she's ready, but I don't think I have any removal that takes care of her either. And I want to try really hard not to keep damage on Sneaky's units because I know he's running those Rapunzels. And next turn he'll be able to play a Rapunzel so long as he has a card to ink. So we'll play Aurora and we'll shift it onto the little Aurora. And this is where I'm kind of in a difficult position. I can quest with the Grammatala and get 1 lore. But again, I just run into the problem where Sneaky can challenge into anything that I quest this turn and then potentially play Rapunzel and draw cards off of it, which is a little bit of a disadvantage for me. But we kind of have to do it. We can't just sit around and not do anything. You can see very quickly how this is not a very favored matchup on my part. Mainly because Rapunzel is just strong, man. Anything to do with steel when we're leaving damage on the board, especially against high willpower characters like Cinderella, is really difficult for me to handle. So I'd really like to ramp as fast as I can so I can just kind of start putting pressure on myself and forcing Sneaky to actually do a bunch of the challenging instead of me having to deal with his stuff. He's going to play a second Lantern. That's not amazing for me either. That's just even more stuff he'll be able to play faster than I can. Plays an Aladdin Street Rat. So this is another scary thing to see because currently Sneaky can play a 6-cost character. And Aladdin Heroic Outlaw can shift for 5, which means that next turn, if Sneaky wants to and has it in his hand, he can shift Aladdin Heroic Outlaw out. Then he can challenge into anything that I have exerted. I'll lose 2 lore, he'll gain 2 lore. And again, there'll probably be damage that's stuck on that. So We're at a very interesting spot. I think I have a grab your swords and a let it go in hand. And neither of these targets are great let it go targets to sing with Aurora. We're gonna go ahead and develop your brain, see what we can pull. We found a Maleficent, and can't tell what the other one is. It might be another Maurice, which we already have one in hand, so we probably don't need a second Maurice. Again, we're not ramping very quickly either. So we decide to take the Maleficent, I think. Then we're gonna sing, grab your sword with Aurora, mainly taking out the Aladdin. Again, I was a little bit scared of the Aladdin Heroic Outlaw being shifted down. I really wanted to avoid that, being able to challenge anything, because he could easily take out my Aurora. But that does put 2 damage on Cinderella. Kind of have to hope that that's fine. Sneaky's actually doing the ramping way faster than we are. We haven't done hardly any ramping this game at all. Unfortunately, we didn't draw into any one jump aheads or fishbone quills or anything to actually do much ramping. And I don't really want to throw my Grammatala into the Cinderella. Sneaky's gonna challenge my Grammatala to put 3 damage on Cinderella, and I think you guys will see just why I didn't want to throw Grammatala into Cinderella. Yep, we see the Rapunzel come down, heal 3 damage. Sneaky's gonna draw 3 cards. That is a very, very big tempo swing for Sneaky. Not very good for me at all. It helps me ramp a little bit, but it's not great for me. He just drew a bunch of cards, got rid of my stuff, healed all the way back up, and we see another Aladdin Street Rat come straight down. So now we still have the threat of Aladdin Heroic Outlaw. And Sneaky's, everything on Sneaky's side of the board except for the Aladdin has a lot of willpower. So it's going to be really difficult for me to take care of it. Both Cinderella and Rapunzel are going to quest for 2 lore, which is going to start adding up quickly. And I'm not in a position where I can just keep questing myself, again, because of that Aladdin Heroic Outlaw. Even just singing with Aurora doesn't feel great here because, you know, I can use the Let It Go and get rid of something, but that's not great. We're just going to ink one of the Let It Goes. And with 6 ink, only 3 cards in hand, not really a way to draw anything right now. I think I have a Maleficent, a Maurice, and a Let It Go. And I'm contemplating if I want to Let It Go something and that be the end of the turn. And none of these things feel great to do that. Especially since it just adds to Sneaky's ink and he's already so far ahead. So we're just going to play Maleficent. This will help us be able to challenge into stuff, maybe start taking things out. She's a little bit of a problem on board with having 3 lore. By no means am I ahead in lore because Sneaky's probably just going to be able to quest out the next turn. And he's going to skyrocket in ink, which is not going to be good for me. Or sorry, skyrocket in lore, which isn't going to be very good for me. Especially since he had just drawn a bunch of cards. And I'm a little bit low on cards with only 2 cards in hand. Oh, we see the Moana come down, which is really scary, especially since he has 2 princesses on board already. If that Moana stays up, he'll be able to just quest with both Cinderella and Rapunzel, and quest with Moana, ready them back up, keep them safe. So he's going to quest with both of them, go up to 6 lore, and he's just going to pass. He's in a very ahead position right now, that he doesn't really need to overextend in anything. He's got plenty of ink in his inkwell, lots of stuff on board. I don't have any good cards to respond to this in Sapphire or Steel because I really need to take care of this whole board. You see, I'm going to let it go the Moana because that's a pretty immediate threat. That's not something that I can let just slide. He's going to get away. He's going to get ahead too quickly if I do that. And then we have to put some pressure on board, so just trying to keep up. We quest with Maleficent because we can't take anything out with her. The Rapunzel and the Cinderella have too high of a willpower to use Maleficent, and we just want to try to develop a little bit, try to catch up a little bit. You know, now we have 8 lore on board, you know, which is a lot of lore. It's more than Sneaky has. So if we can keep some of this stuff on board, I will be a little bit ahead. We can maybe put on a little bit of pressure, but this is definitely really close, especially if Sneaky decides to shift an Aladdin and can take out my stuff. I don't know if he has it in hand or not. He certainly has the ink to do that if he wants to. Yep, so we see the Aladdin Heroic Outlaw shift. He's unfortunately going to take out my Aurora. Really sets me behind, takes away 2 of my lore, gives him 2 lore, puts 3 damage on Aladdin. And Sneaky's got so much ink. He's just going to play another Rapunzel, kill the 3 right off of Aladdin. So he basically got a free trade there and drew 3 cards and stole 2 lore. It's just kind of value city over on Sneaky's side of the board. Then he can very comfortably just quest with everything because, again, Cinderella and Rapunzel have super high willpower. The 3 strength on Maleficent just isn't going to be enough to effectively take care of anything. Sneaky's in a very, very ahead position, and there's really nothing that I can draw or do here that's going to help me out. Even if I had 2 grab your sword in hand, that would only do 4 damage to everything, and I want to say everything on Sneaky's side of the board has 5 willpower or higher, so even that wouldn't be very helpful, and it would just kind of leave everything damaged. So we're in a really, really bad position right here, and to be honest, I'm not sure if there's a way out of it. The best thing we could do is maybe have a giant Tinkerbell and hope to get into some grab your swords, but obviously that isn't in this deck, it being a budget deck. I'm trying to figure out if there's any way for me to come back with this. I can't just quest with the Maleficents because then Sneaky can challenge into them and then challenge with Aladdin and just steal the lore right away from me. So the Aladdin's the biggest threat right now just because of the ability to steal lore and gain lore at the same time while taking things out on my side of the board. And it keeps my Maleficents alive. It is very, very unfortunate that I had to use both of them to challenge the Aladdin though. Oh, we only had a little Captain Hook in hand. That's not going to help us very much at all. And Sneaky would have won, by the way, also, had I not challenged something. So I was forced to challenge something there. Otherwise, he had 8 lore on board. He could have just quested out to 20 and won. Now he's got 20, or sorry, now he's got 2 Rapunzels on board and a Cinderella. He could probably even just full quest here and still be fine too. Yeah, we see a Maui come down. That's going to take out the damaged Maleficent. He's going to play a LeFou, which is going to ready the Maui, and he's going to take out the other Maleficent. And I think that's just the nail in the coffin right there. There's nothing I'm going to be able to draw that's going to allow me to do 5 damage to everything next turn. And Sneaky's just going to full quest with everything, get all the way up to 18. There's no way for me to take away any lore from him either to slow him down. There's no rush characters. I draw a baby Captain Hook. And I definitely know that that's not going to be helpful. So we're just going to quest with Captain Hook, try to keep a little bit of dignity, get up to 3 lore, and pass the turn to let Sneaky win. As you can see, sometimes these budget decks just aren't going to do it. When you draw a not great hand and your opponent gets to use some of those expensive cards and great value cards like Rapunzel to her fullest, it's always going to be an uphill battle. I wanted to be transparent in this budget deck series and show you that sometimes the games just aren't going to go your way. If I only showed you the wins, I wouldn't be doing the series justice, but I don't want that to discourage you into thinking you can't win with budget decks or even the budget deck in this video. It's very important when working with a limited card pool to cater your deck to the decks you're running into at your local league. If your deck isn't working, try to find where it's falling short and see if there are any cards you can switch out to give you a better chance in those matchups, or figure out if there's mistakes you're making when playing against those decks. We're 1-1 in this budget deck challenge, which means it'll be up to the Ruby Emerald deck to see if these budget decks can take a best of 3 against Sneaky's deck. Be on the lookout for that final episode in this budget deck series soon, and again, if you haven't seen the last episode of this series or want help on deck building in general, I highly suggest you watch my previous videos on these topics. The links will be in the description. Most importantly, make sure to take care of yourself. My name is Brandon, also known as B Squared. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.